Just reading my book.
Hello to everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you joining us. My name is Montouro. I've worked with the Reader for 24 years. The paper turns 50 in October. That's almost half its history. And I've been music editor there since 2004. Since June 2010, so 10 years ago, I've had the pleasure of working in that capacity with Leor Galil, our guest of honor tonight.
Hello.
The guy waved. He started that June as a freelancer with a piece on DIY venue Strange Light. And then that fall, he was hired as a staffer, a development I've never had cause to regret. If you told me a decade ago that by 2020, Leor would be the only music journalist left in Chicago with a full-time staff job, of course I would have been sad for the rest of the industry, and I am. But at the same time, it really couldn't have happened to a kinder, more conscientious guy. We're all here tonight to celebrate his first book. It's a 185-page collection of 20 of Leor's favorite stories from those 10 years. Everyone got one. One of the first things you'll notice about Leor's writing, especially if you've read a lot of music journalism, is its depth, its detail, its commitment to accuracy. Leor takes full advantage of the Reader's weekly schedule, or I guess now bi-weekly in print, to slow down and really listen, not just to the music, but to the people who make it. He treats every one of his feature stories like it might be the only thing you read about whatever he's covering. That means connecting every dot. And all this detail doesn't just make these pieces longer, though some of them are pretty substantial.
10,000 words, preferably.
10,000 words, that's... The link also illuminates the points of connection and the unexpected overlaps among the many music communities that collectively make Chicago such a great city in which to do this job. Well, his job, my job too. In keeping with the alt-weekly tradition, and that is a thing, there might not be many alt-weeklies left, but Leor focuses on smaller artists, not established stars. It's nothing particularly alternative about getting in line to cover the same 3 or 4 artists that everybody else writes about every time they sneeze. With curiosity and compassion, he brings into sharp focus the real person behind the music. This makes for compelling reading in its own right, of course. It also has the beneficial side effect of portraying music as something that ordinary people do. Ordinary people of all colors, classes, and backgrounds, and keeping music connected to its grassroots heart. Just as music is something that would have continued to exist for its own sake, even if the music business had never emerged. Leor could keep going even if every marketer, middleman, and gatekeeper suddenly went extinct. That's because he cares about the people, not about the industry. Quite a few of those people are here tonight. I hope you can see them on the screen with me. Leor's first guest at this launch party is Andre Vasquez. Want to wave? No, not you, Leor. I mean,
Like waving.
Andre. Anyway, he was profiled in the Reader a few months before he defeated longtime incumbent Pat O'Connor to become 40th Ward Alderman. In the 1990s, Vasquez was better known as Prime, who emerged from Chicago's battle rap scene and became a member of Hugs Adams' Nacrobats Collective and foundational Chicago hip-hop crew Molnet. As Alderman, Vasquez has spearheaded a program to make and distribute face masks to essential workers in his ward, and he's co-sponsored an ordinance. I'm going to try that word again. Co-sponsored an ordinance that would establish a Civilian Police Accountability Council. CPAC. You've seen that acronym. You love that acronym. Thank you very much for doing that, sir. Next on the schedule, second guest is actually, we got several people out here. Pivot Gang and the John Walt Foundation. Fresh Waters, MF and Mello, co-founders of the Pivot Gang, and Nichelle Pugh, co-founder of the John Walt Foundation. I think we have another channel with maybe, Joseph Killiams and Day Day in there. Pivot began as Fresh, Mello, Joseph Killiams, Saba, and John Walt. By the time they released their debut studio album, You Can't Sit With Us, in April 2019, Walt had tragically been killed. Pugh is his mother, and she serves as executive director of the arts nonprofit that bears his name. She and Fresh recently helped organize the foundation's Feed the West Side food drive, which I believe had an event on Saturday. Fresh is working on his debut project. He's been contributing to Chicago punk and emo since he started drumming for Captain Jazz in the early 90s. He's also played in Owls and Joan of Arc, but his main concern for much of the past 2 decades has been his solo project, Owen. Leor's book includes a piece about Mike's short-lived but hugely influential late 90s college emo band, American Football, which reunited in 2014 and has released 2 albums since. Last month, Kinsella put out his first Owen record since 2016, called Avalanche. Tonight's last guest is the singer-songwriter Kaina Castillo, who released her debut album, Next to the Sun, last year via Super Records. Leor's story about the birth of that record spends a lot of time illustrating the importance of Castillo's real and chosen families. We get to hear, for instance, about her mother cooking for the entire crew of a music video we shot at her parents' house. Speaking of chosen family, Castillo is close friends and collaborators with Sen Morimoto, who'll be accompanying her on piano for a song later, although you might stay off camera, I'm sure. She's been tour manager for Raven Lene, and she's one of the few guest musicians on Saba's 2018 album, Care For Me, to bring it back to Pivot. Leor tells stories about all of these people in this new book. You can also read a profile of Chance the Rapper from 2013, just before Acid Rap came out. As far as I know, it's the biggest piece about Chance published anywhere at that point in his career. You can learn about the deep roots of the fourth wave emo scene that emerged in the Midwest in the early 2010s, or about the specialized trade in used vinyl that provides your local shop with some of its choicest LPs. There's a story about anti-folk artist Willis Earl Beale. Leor met him because he posted a flyer that said, "I want some friends. I am not a weasel," and ended up contributing to the press materials for Willis's major label debut, I think less than a year later. There's a story about instrumental doom metal band Bong Ripper, story about irrepressible free jazz oracle Angel Bata Weed, and I'm probably still leaving out a dozen. If you don't have a copy already, I'm gonna hold it up again. Please consider picking one up tonight. With your support, the reader will be able to keep paying Leor to do this. It's rough to be a free paper when nobody's advertising, but you can help. And with that, I think I'm about done. I'm going to turn things over to the man of the hour, Leor.
Thanks, Philip. I appreciate that, and thank you, everyone, for coming on and talking to me. It's so good to see all your faces. I wish I could sit down with you in person, but it means a lot for you to come and share your evening with me, and to share your stories with me. And thank you, everyone who's watching at home. If you haven't bought the book, I feel weird telling you to buy something that I wrote, but please consider it. It does support me, and it supports the reader at large. All the money goes back to the reader. I signed some copies here. It's strange to make out copies to somebody you don't know who's purchased it, but I'm happy to sign copies for those of you who have them in the future. Without further ado, what was that, Philip?
And you're also strange.
Yes. With that in mind, I'd like to start things off with Alderman Andre Vasquez. Alderman, it's nice to be able to say Alderman. When we first met, you were one of 5 candidates for Alderman in the 40th Ward. And it was right before the critical race that led to your runoff with the incumbent Patrick O'Connor, who was the second longest serving Alderman in City Council. I was driven to talk to you because of your history in hip-hop. You're one of the most renowned battle rappers in the city, which has produced so many battle rappers. And I wanted to talk to you about that history and how it leaned into your, current political future, your road towards politics. How often did you consider your past in hip-hop as a pivotal part of your future in politics?
I definitely didn't consider it when I was doing it. So when I was out there being a rapper, I never in my wildest dreams pictured I'd be running for office at some point. But I knew when we made the decision to run that it was going to be something that was going to come up, right? That having the past that I did, how hip-hop is viewed, really some of the language that I had used, I knew that it was going to be a narrative that I had to make sure that people kind of understood. And so I can't overstate really how crucial that piece was in having that ability to talk to you and have that story told. I think it made a huge difference as far as what we were doing.
Why is that?
For a couple of reasons. I mean, I think Philip.
Hold on, I gotta pull some potatoes up.
What?
Me feel that made me feel like, I felt in the moment. I felt like it really told a story in a way that somebody who was not a part of the hip hop community could have read it and said, I have a much better understanding of the complexity. I without a doubt, and now I've had a lot more articles written right since being in office, but without a doubt, that's the one that I can't wait for my kids to be older to read that one, because it really does an amazing job of covering what that moment in my life was like.
I'm blushing. Thank you. That's very nice to hear. Usually, I think the only person reading are my parents and whoever I wrote about. So that's really, really cool. That in mind, looking back on your road through hip hop, what sticks out to you as important to your growth as a person?
Yeah, I think, and I'll say that for a lot of folks who are part of not just hip hop, but the punk scene and all other scenes. If you've grown up in environments where you didn't have much, and all that you feel you have is your ability to express yourself, right? You deal with a certain amount of oppression through your whole life, and everything's political, but we just don't necessarily understand it, right? So I grew up in like 90s hip hop, where it was like Ice Cube, Public Enemy, NWA, KRS-One, Nas, right? Like clearly all amazing writers, clearly all with a political slant. But if you asked me about politics during that time, I couldn't even start a conversation. So it wasn't until, further on in my life growing up, you have kids, you start reassessing things, that realizing my political identity, it didn't shift much. I just found different words to articulate it from when I grew up, right? So you grow up listening to NWA, and then you find out that you're going to become the elected official that's also working on police accountability. It's not that far away of a track, right? Because it's about the experience behind it that drives the ability to keep pushing and make sure that when you look at law, it's not just literature, it's not just paper. It's really about what the experiences mean and what you can do to affect that change, knowing the environments you come from. So it's definitely been something that drove me ever since growing up and getting kicked out of Grant Park every weekend for trying to battle rap, to then looking back and think about how we create a city that actually has equity in it. It's very much fueled by it.
Now, I'm curious, what, since you won the election and became an alderman, it's been 14 months, May of last year? What have you learned about the role of alderman that you didn't know going into this? There's when I was doing this story, I did talk to people on the street, and a lot of people just thought the alderman was the person who wasn't cleaning their streets after it snowed, which just makes me curious. Yeah, what about your current role did you not anticipate going into, and what have you learned since being in it?
Yeah, I think that the real challenging part is I was an activist also prior to coming into the council. So you come in from the outside in talking about all of them. They're all dirty. They're all bums, right? Like you have this idea because you're used to being outside of it. Once you're in it, it also becomes more complex because you realize that I'm going to disagree vehemently with some of these folks, but I'm also going to agree with them on different issues. So having to learn how to build those relationships, that part was really it was challenging, especially because I think people looked at me a certain way when I came into the council, like it was a good, nice run of people just making rapper jokes and, hey, you're gonna come rap and like that kind of stuff. So to have the weight of being a legislator and then showing people what we're here to do, I think helped ground that. But I think similarly, the part that is the taking care of the potholes and everything else, right? Like, I'll just be frank. Like, as a person of color, being an elected official, that is like the most ground level one. You get everything. You get people that need a lot of help. You get people that look at you like you are the help. And so trying to maneuver through that and be able to keep a cool temperament, I say years of battle rap sure did help set that up, where I can just sit there and be like, okay, cool, we're going to figure out we're going to help. You can yell all the things you need to do. But to me, it doesn't faze me the same because I had years of people literally yelling in my face. So I think I would say it's not a bad thing to have some of that in your resume coming into the council.
I know you had a relationship with Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa. Who have you developed a working relationship with on the city council that's really helped you get closer to achieving your goals?
That's a bit challenging, right? Because I think some of it is, there's like this rookie class that came in, right? That out of it, 5 of us were Democratic Socialists. We've got folks like Matt Martin, who is in the ward right next to me, who is just really a good resource and helpful. There's folks like Sophia King, who's the chair of the Progressive Caucus, that you really learn a lot. That's what I've come to appreciate, that everyone's got a different perspective and their own style to the role. So it's fun. I'm really glad this is a space to talk about it. It's not dissimilar to when I used to watch and see different rappers who have different styles of how they deliver like lines and how they put things together. Even when you have the same goal, you're able to watch somebody else's approach, and it allows me to look and go, oh, that was cool. Maybe I need to adjust how I deliver a message, but also realize what my strengths are as well. So it's been really a fulsome conversation with a lot of the colleagues, but we're all like I said, a lot of the rookies are learning, and it's a whole new council. We're all in a pandemic. I don't think anybody really would have predicted how to move in this environment. But there's a lot to learn and a lot of colleagues to learn from.
And in the pandemic, you've led you spearheaded these initiatives to get masks to people in your ward who have to work, essential workers, people who work at retail spaces who don't have a choice of whether or not they can show up to work. How have you navigated all this as a leader in your community when you're supposed to stay away, essentially, stay apart from your community?
I mean, I think it is very isolating. I think this is the time of year where I'd be out knocking on doors and hanging out at the block parties, trying to get to know how everything's going with the neighbors. But I think what really a couple of things fueled us putting together what we call the 40th Ward Neighbor Network. One major thing is I grew up the son of immigrants. I grew up in an immigrant family, and I almost daily remind myself that if this had occurred in the 80s, I don't think my parents would have lived through it. Like, I think about the folks that are out there on the front line that get sick, that don't know how to access healthcare, that don't have language issues, right? Like, I don't lose that. And so that's what keeps me working like 25/8 instead of 24/7. Like, I'll be out there. But the other part, which is interesting, is in effect, all you're doing is creating a crew. So similar to like, it all comes back to the things that I learned in my life. You find all these folks who have skill sets, and you go, okay, you're really good at this. You're good at this over there. I think if we all come together, we'll actually come up with a better solution. And like that's how hip hop started, right? Like the school system in New York, the school system had eliminated their ability to have any instruments through their music program, right? So in effect, they shut that down, and then you ended up having communities that really looked at the resources they had, like, oh, hey, your parents have some records over here. Somebody here's got a spray can. We've got to do something. Let's create this culture. And it really shows that if you look at how many resources we have as a community and you put that together, you end up really winning. And similar, like I would have never looked at that as socialism, but now being a democratic socialist, I'm like, oh, that makes pretty much sense. Like we're here as one community. If we work together on stuff, we'll actually get to a result rather than like the divide and conquer aspect. And that's allowed us to really talk to neighbors of all types across the board. We actually developed a team of sewists that 30 folks just started sewing masks, and we distributed about 25,000 across the board. So that was just putting a crew together. Instead of rappers, it was sewists. All wild, but I'm really fortunate to be in a position to do it.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Alderman Vasquez. And speaking of crews, I'd like to turn it over to Pivot Gang, to Nichelle. Thank you guys so much for sitting down and talking with us. How was everyone?
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. So what we're talking about is John Walt Day 2018, the second annual John Walt Day.
Love you so much.
You guys are so sweet. Oh my God, it's so nice to see you. That means a lot. You guys, happy birthday, Chilliams.
Birthday, Joseph.
Happy birthday, Joe Chilliams. Now tell me, I'm gonna go to the root of John Walt Day. What inspired John Walt Day? What inspired the John Walt Foundation?
I guess I'll go. Hey, Leor.
Let's go, Nichelle. Thank you.
And I also, before we start, I just want to say this week is Pivot Holiday Week, period. Because we kick it off with Joe's birthday, then Bob's birthday, and Kinsella. That's why she's so right there. And this week, happy birthday to all my babies. Walt Day was actually in 2017. Once we talked about starting a nonprofit organization in Walt's honor. We wanted to give out scholarships to youth between the age of 14 and 24 who are inspiring artists. So we had to figure out how to get money, right? The way to get the money to fund these scholarships was to throw this major concert, which is held annually, our benefit concert, which supports the foundation. We have been working independently. We haven't had any grant or any type of major funding from anyone. We do get individual donations, but the majority of the funds that we get in order to run the nonprofit organization comes from John Walt Day. The first one was in November of 2017. which was actually 25th. East. So we could celebrate.
And that first John Walt Day was so moving. It was really wonderful to see everyone at Pivot on stage celebrating Walt. Walter Long Jr., who was a co-founder of Pivot Gang. Now, tell me, Pivot, how did y'all form, and in what place did kind of Walt fit into your puzzle?
Okay, so we were already doing our thing. We formed when, we all pretty much been rapping on our own. We started hanging out like each other, started rapping together, like groups. And Walt pretty much, he came a lot later, and we were already doing our thing, and we were like, who is this person that's like, like he just wanted to do it because we were doing it at the time. Like it was like, you don't know how serious someone is taking it when they're like, hey, can I join you? But so we were like, no, you can't be in Pivot. And then he was like, okay,
He made like a mixtape.
Yeah, I'm gonna prove it to you guys. And he made like a mixtape in a week, and then the next got another mix. It's just like, oh damn. Well, I didn't have a mixtape, and who am I to say that he can't be in it? Like he already proved his point. Like so, he was definitely one person that was like it's not like I'm gonna talk about it. He's like I'm gonna show you and prove to you, and he just made us all believers in him very easily. It's kind of funny how he did. And
We were so
yeah, it really just made all the sense in the world having him there because he was a different energy, a different person, and just getting to know him. Because we weren't really like out of all of us at that time, like we were probably around him at least. We all just started to come into a fold together. Really our own.
And so how did working with him in this creative way kind of affect all of you as artists and as individuals? What did he do to help you grow?
He really make you like put up or shut up. You know what I mean? Like you really gonna have to pick up your slack. Or whatever you say you're gonna do, you gonna have to show it because he definitely coming. He's gonna do exactly what he say. So it's like you gotta be about that life.
his energy was very contagious. He worked a lot. He made you feel like you weren't doing enough if you were around him. So like I think that's what he mostly brought to me. It just made me work different. He just made me want to be in the studio more. If I couldn't get to the studio, he'd make me want to find a different place to go record. Like no matter what it was, he found a way to make it happen. Like it was to a point where we'd have been in like studios that are quite expensive, and like if he couldn't get there, he'd get to the point where he recording it on his iPhone. It's like whatever he can to get the work done that day, he gonna do it. So I think that's the biggest impact he had on me and probably everybody else too, just his work ethic.
And last year you dropped your debut studio album as a crew. What have y'all been working on now?
We've been working on just trying to not get coronavirus.
Basically.
That could go platinum real quick. That'll be tight.
Actually.
Yeah.
It's just a lot going on. So I think we mostly just been trying to just take care of, ourselves and those around us, trying to make sure we are that healthy as we can be, whether that's mentally or physically, just going through all the changes that the world is going through right now.
And speaking of taking care of people, I mean, the John Walt Foundation spearheaded Feed the West Side, which has been providing food and supplies for people in need, which Matt Harvey over at The Tribe, one of my favorite writers in the city, one of my favorite writers ever, compared to what the Black Panther Party was doing in the late 60s with feeding school children. So I want to know, tell me a little bit about what putting that together, what getting the word out to people in need, what that's been like, because you've done 2 of these food drives now.
Yeah. We've done 2, one at Columbus Park and one at the Folly Park. They kind of all began a little bit after the uprising. People
we just couldn't get to, resources. So we just wanted to help as best we could. We saw a couple friends. They kind of started a couple sites on the south side. So it was like, had a couple helping hands at their site and kind of, figured out what we should do on our end, on our side of town. So it's just been like, a big wave of just trying to bridge over this desert, because these pockets on the south and west side, they like food deserts. So we're just trying to bridge these food deserts and turn it into oasis as best as we can. But the community's been coming out. It's been an eye-opener for us, mainly because it's like we're able to interact and talk one-on-one and see, what the community actually needs as far as like what they looking to eat. Like I know that growing up, it's like we only subject to certain amounts of certain resources. So it's just like being able to have more of an option or a healthier option is, it's just been a great help. People are able to talk about more things and figure out, if they want to change their dads around, they want to bring different things into their neighborhood. So,
we had, it was kind of a funny thing when, like, the riots happened and stores were looted and shut down or just tore down or burnt down. We were talking about like what could we do, and as he said, we had a lot of friends in our community that had been doing pop-up food pantries and things on predominantly the south side of Chicago. And we're from the Austin area, each one of us, and we've been seeing deserts in the first place, for many years. It's been so long that we've been stuck in these food deserts without the correct, produce and things of that nature. It's a whole bunch of restaurants, little fast food restaurants and things of that nature. As far as having the resources that's needed, we felt that was something it took a lot of effort. Our first one didn't really take a lot of time and effort to get the word out. We did that within like seconds. Very overwhelming response. As far as donations, we got monetary donations and physical donations. When we got to the park, we thought we were going to have to go back out and get some more items. Out away for like a few minutes just to go get volunteers some food. And when I came back, the whole park was just completely filled with items that people had dropped off for us to package for the people in need.
That's so cool. I think that's it on the time, unfortunately. But Day-Day, real quick, what date is it? Sorry about that. I'm gonna. It's so good to see you guys. I'm jumping to our next guest. I'll introduce him as Chilliams. I know you love Haley Williams. This guy's recorded with Haley Williams. Mike, how's it going? Mike, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Cool. I can't hear you. So we're here to talk about American football, which is your college band that reunited in 2014. And I wrote about you guys when you were about to release your first of what's been 2 reunion records, American Football, which is the same title as all the other American football records. That's
our lack of ingenuity. I don't know. Yeah.
But speaking of ingenuity, how did you figure out how to build on this beloved record while also figuring out your new identity, considering it had been close to 2 decades since you put out that first record?
Can I start with, that's such a weird transition of you guys like helping communities and stuff, and then I'm like, I used to be in a college band, which is just, it makes me feel irrelevant, is a kind way to say it. And that's why I was everybody sort of like appear to appreciate you, Leor, and it's like, that was sort of my thing, was like, oh man, like if Leor likes my band, maybe, maybe it's worthwhile. Honestly, like if somebody who's like has such varied interests and whatever, like, maybe whatever I'm doing might be not that bad. Anyways, what was the question?
Well, what was it like revisiting this band that you were in college and having to create something new out of essentially a past self?
Yeah, it started just as reunion shows, so that was sort of. I want to say it ended up being fun. I don't know if it was fun going in until it was fun. It was just sort of like I kind of felt like this is weird. It's like looking at your old yearbooks or whatever, like this is odd. And then it was fun. We ended up as adults, we get along way better than we did ever as kids, and and then we did it for maybe a year and a half, and we're like, well, we can't keep playing 12 songs. We have to play more songs. So, and now we're still trying to do it, but it's obviously challenging now. So.
But I checked in on your Minecraft festival performance. Tell me a little bit about that, because that was actually the first time that I'd ever been on Minecraft.
Me too. We were sort of obviously asked. We didn't really. It wasn't our idea. Label mates Anna Managuchi is a band, and they have done this before and have experience, and they create a virtual venue, and it's way above my 43-year-old head of how. Well, until the moment it happened, I'm not sure exactly. Like, it was like pre-programmed set, and then I recorded some between song banter just to try to keep it sort of like a little bit live or a little bit sort of real. It's the first time they gave me a login, and I had my kids with me, and they were showing me how to log in and how to get in there. So I had a character that was me, and it seems, from what I can gather, out of a whole keyboard, every button just makes the guy jump up and down. Like, that's like all you could do. So I was like, I thought I would like interact with people, and like I thought I'd walk around and people would be like, oh, there's my Kinsella like in the game, but I was just one of many people just jumping around. So.
You mentioned revisiting the songs when American football first reunited was a little bit like looking at an old yearbook. Has that changed at any point now that you've put out two albums?
Yeah, I think. It's many years go by. I think like we kind of the second album was sort of like maybe there was pressure to do what we did before, which is weird. 20 years later, it'd be like. Recreate a high school or recreate a yearbook photo. It was like, well, that's weird. I don't look the same. And then we did that, and I think maybe we didn't know what would happen, and maybe nothing happened in a fine way. Like just sort of, okay, we wrote songs and people heard it. And there was like maybe 30 hours people cared, and then back to reality. And the next time we're just like, we still enjoy hanging out. We still enjoy writing music, so let's just write it more for ourselves. And obviously, it's more satisfying, sort of. And, kind of where we're at. I think like there's no expectations now. It's really just part time, and we feel lucky to have sort of an outlet to do that.
Yeah, not all of you live in the same place. Nate's in New York. One of the Steves is down in Colorado. The other Steve is in the burbs. How do you all came out of a DIY community where, regardless of what you're saying, Mike, I think being a part of a community is very important to the music that you make.
Sure. I would say just in the past, with everything going on the past few months, it means more now. Like then, I understand like it's important to be, like you said, DIY community was cool, and there was, autonomous zones, and there was like a sense of community and a sense of sort of like helping other people that were sort of like affected by whatever's going on. It just seems everything seems way more urgent and way more. It just seems like there's bigger stakes now, and it seems truly, honestly, odd to just to be like, oh, I play music. It seems like that's not enough anymore. Whereas literally a few months ago it seemed like it was enough. At least it was enough for me. Like we're all just sort of like families, and it was a part-time job, and we're all just trying to get by, and whatever. And now it just seems like there's almost like a guilt involved, just like maybe whatever, I don't know, platforms the word, but not using sort of resources or energy to towards something better or more important.
So where are you putting your energy now?
I got some. I would like to say I'm doing more, maybe. I'm trying to, same as everybody, I'm trying to navigate what my voice is in this. I'm obviously donating to causes that I feel are worthwhile. I'm mostly spending all my days trying to keep my kids from punching each other or whatever. Yeah, like there's like everything's changed. We're like, macro and micro, everything has changed. So it's yeah, I'm swimming in it still. I mean, I still try to write songs, but I'm also, at the end of the day, I'm just kind of tired of the reality of our world and like, oh my God, who cares about that song? So.
And last month you put out your first Owen album since American Football Reunited, since you guys put out 2 albums. How did you approach just switching from essentially one voice to another? Both of them are in your voice, but there are identities for each act.
Yeah, I think maybe American Football might be sort of like, that's like sort of me out at a bar, and then Owen is more leaving the bar when I get home. You know what I mean? I don't think it's all the same voice, but as soon as I write something, I sort of know which way it's going. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not like more or less personal, but it's more like what I'll let people see or something, or maybe, like like if I want to present something to somebody, and then the other one's sort of more like what I'm sort of hiding.
So at what point did you realize you were working on what became the Owen album, The Avalanche?
I mean, as soon as American Football, whatever the last LP3 came out, whatever I was writing, it's everything's a reaction. So it's, the album comes out, and you play a bunch of shows, then you're in a band with a bunch of guys, and I got headphones on, and I'm just like, God, I need to do something else or something for a while, or focus on something else. And then if the world didn't turn upside down, I would have played I'd be in the middle of playing a bunch of own shows and totally pining for, friends to be with in a van or on stage. So.
That in mind, what can you tell us about the material you're working on now to feel like anything, like you're building towards anything?
Yeah, now everybody's super socially distanced. So it's just a bunch of files in a Dropbox folder so far.
That's great. I think that's it for our time. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Leor.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. Kaina, you are our last guest. It's so good to see you. Your album, Next to the Sun, came out a year ago, right?
Yeah, it's been like a few days after the 1 year of Next to the Sun and that whole amazing weekend. So feeling real nostalgic, and when I got asked to do this, felt super nostalgic because your piece, I don't think anyone here is saying it just is to gas you up, even though we should gas you up, but that is my favorite piece, I think, written on my family and I. Because my fam, I'm first gen, so sometimes being a first gen kid, it's hard to feel like you've established roots in the U.S. And your piece made me feel like, if I have kids or as time goes on, that someone will find something on my family. Like we existed here and someone took the time to really care about us. So, I feel like maybe my parents don't think about it that way. They're just like, look, she's in the newspaper. But for me, I'm like, you feel such a weight to establish your roots here for yourself and then for your family. And so reading, just thinking about that piece makes me emotional because you just you're amazing. You're the best. You're the best person.
Thank you. One of the things that I loved about talking to you about your family was it was unquestionable that you have roots here. Your parents were on the town till 4 a.m. before they had you and your brother. The fact that your mom took care of so many people who are in sports and who have touched so many lives, it's remarkable.
And still does, but yeah, I think similarly, emotion and feeling I'm trying to break within the stuff I'm doing though is that that's the thing about other people observing my family or you writing this piece is that we always give so much and do a lot of work all the time and we don't think about it and it doesn't so we still get back home and maybe feel a little empty or displaced, but sometimes something like your piece makes us we're oh, we have done a lot, at least for me. I'm oh Yeah.
No, it's fun. This was your debut album, but you put out music before that. You've been a part of a community that, unquestionably to me, you were always there. It always seemed like you were always there. So it was great to be able to learn the steps that you took to get to this place where you're like this, powerhouse vocalist and powerhouse singer. And I realize vocalist and singer are the same thing. Sorry. But what's interesting about this album is the way that you kind of challenged yourself thematically. You said before this album you were tired of writing just like feeling like you had to write happy songs. How did you get to a place where you were able to dig deeper into thematic elements that you didn't feel like you were ready to prior to?
It just took time and mentioned before, but Sen's here, but off cam. But it was really Sen was like, you have a bunch of demos that you think are shitty. Like, we could just make songs out of these. And there were songs that I wrote my freshman year of college when I was 19, 18. And I had performed those previously in high school. And I just never thought about releasing them. I was playing around Chicago, but I had no recorded music, and I just kept getting booked for things. And so a lot of these songs existed, and then the people I've met, the music went a different direction, which was totally fine and really fun for me. But then writing this album was getting back to the thing, to that initial vulnerability. And a year later with perspective, it was I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm definitely an extrovert, and so I feel like people think they know me, and they definitely do. I'm not lying about who I am when you meet me, but if you want to crack that deeper level, there's definitely a wall there. So this was me attempting to be completely honest about who I am, and that was really hard for me. So I don't know. That's where it went, and that's the songs that I had written, and maybe. And I was going through that work at the same time I was writing the songs, that was these songs were written when I had dropped out of college, and that's such a big deal for a first gen kid. And my parents were fine about it eventually, but just a lot of moving around and not sitting to reflect. And I was doing all of that internal work as a human being while making the album, and it just reflects, being sad, being a first-gen kid and being sad, being a first-gen kid and being in love. What does that feel like and look like for me? And I was going through that work, asking myself those questions while writing.
And part of what I also love about the album is that it's also a nice testament to your friendship and creative collaboration with Sen, who is off camera.
Hi, people, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Sen. Tell me what it was like kind of working with him in a way that allowed you to reach this individual, this point in your career where you hadn't been able to before.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've only worked with my best friends up to this point, and so Sen is my best friend. And I also think when I met him, I was I've never listened to and watched someone create so raw, and I think that his music influenced my music a ton, because before my Sweet as Hell EP or the For You EP, the stuff that I was playing in high school that wasn't recorded was weird math, soul, R&B shit, so it wasn't sweet pop songs. And so then that's what people think that I've come from, because those are the songs that are recorded. But me and my friends in high school were writing really weird shit, and Sen kind of I saw him do that and saw how I could bring this pop world into my weird shit that I had been previously doing. So watching him be able to just play every single instrument and not judge me for my ideas, and not judge me for my level of music, because I'm not classically trained. I don't have the right language sometimes, and I'll just be Sen, play this, or try to figure it out by ear, and then he's just yeah, we're doing it, and that's it. Or showing him my demos that I thought were shitty, and then them being on the album, being the complete bones, Next to the Sun, that's me playing bass. Ghost, that's my drums. And those are all things that he saw in my music. And he was like, that's actually good. And I've never had that experience where someone is like, hey, like your ideas are, you're capable of, you're a producer, you know? Like I don't consider myself a producer, but I produced a lot of the bones of my album. And that's like something I'm so proud of now because someone was like, hey, like we could use this. Like I'm going to build on top of your ideas. So he really just, yeah, he brought that out of me and was like, you're not just like, I don't know, you're not stuck. You have the ideas. You're just not like considering them as real ideas. So yeah, it was really great process.
And you mentioned, the weekend of your release show, because it wasn't just the release show. Your mom had a restaurant that weekend.
Yes.
Which sorry, go ahead.
It was crazy. I mean, like, yeah. You what? You missed the arepas?
Yeah, I am really upset that I didn't make it out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like the best thing ever. I mean, yeah. Kevin Koval was like, "There's this open spot that my friend owns. Like, you guys should throw a pop-up restaurant." And I was like, "That sounds crazy." And we just went for it. And yeah, we just. It was insane. Like the first day of the pop-up, it was a 2-day pop-up so that people would come. I wanted people to walk into the restaurant and feel what I felt when I walked into my mom's kitchen. So we like brought all the decorations from the kitchen and like dressed it up. And it was like my mom literally like throwing down in the kitchen with like her friends who she hires when she does catering stuff. And like, it was just like a family effort. All the friends stepped in. There was a moment where we didn't realize it was going to be so crazy. So my friends started stepping in to serve. And it was just beautiful. And through that effort, we sold out Lincoln Hall. And we also threw a gallery at Young Chicago Authors. So it was just like a legendary week. Yes.
Yeah, it was a big weekend.
I left my full-time job that week. So it was like a lot.
And one question before we get into the song, it's been a year since Young came out. What have you learned about it since, in the time that's passed?
Yeah, so this week has been me being like, oh, that happened, or like my mom sending me videos because, like I said before, I'm really bad at being reflective on the work I've done, and I feel really proud. Like it's, you listen to this music over and over again when you're in the studio, and so I don't have, and I'm also not like that. I'm not like, shit goes hard. I wish I could have that personality, but I don't. And so a week, a year later, I'm like, wow, like I'm so proud of this. Like my mom sends me a video from a year ago at Lincoln Hall, and she's singing my lyrics in Spanish, and I'm just like, like that's what it's about. Like to know that, I didn't get to. I feel like I blacked out that whole week, and now I'm here a year later, and I'm like, whoa, like so much happened, and it, I'm proud, and I'm trying to be nicer to myself because I'm like, you worked so hard and you did so much, and like you didn't even take a moment to feel that. So, yeah.
Well, and now you're gonna play a song for us. Why don't you tell us what you're gonna play?
I'm gonna play "Next to the Sun," the title track from the album, my debut album, and I love this song because it was kind of like what anchored the whole project. It helped me understand that what I was exploring was the dualities of my life as a human, as a first-gen kid, as a young woman, and it just like that I could be a million things at the same time and not try to like suck them out of myself, You might hear some cat yells back here.
It's the cat remix.
She's my background singer. Also, thank you so much for asking me to sing. I'm nervous because I'm like, I haven't sang in like 3 months. Like all my tours got canceled and everything. And I was supposed to play Pitchfork this weekend, actually.
I was really excited for that.
Crazy. And I'm like, this is my Pitchfork performance, everybody. Oh. All right, let's try it. Yeah. Put me in the clouds, right under heaven, next to the sun, the sun. Wanna feel it all, burning the lesson, the fall. Oh, I heal, I hurt, I drink the earth to see just how it feels. Chaos, low tides, taste like sunshine, and both they feel as real. Tell me what you think about me, dancing in my duality. Think about it all the time. If I make peace with mine. Tell me what you think about me, dancing in my duality. Think about it all the time. If I make peace with mine. Put me in the clouds, right under heaven, next to the sun, the sun. Wanna feel it all, burning the lesson. Oh, burned out, feeling all the heat rise to my worst doubts. Making friends with me, show me the way out. Won't outrun the parts of me that sting. Tell me what you think about me, dancing in my duality. Think about it all the time. If I make peace with mine. Tell me what you think about me, dancing in my duality. Think about it all the time. If I make peace with mine. Put me in the clouds, right under heaven, next to the sun, the sun. Wanna feel it all, burning the lesson, the fall. Oh. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Kaina. That was beautiful. That was really wonderful.
Feels nice to
wait.
hear. I haven't sang in forever. I think that was my first time singing. Thank you so much, and I just appreciate you so much. Like I said, you've anchored some solid history for people to look at, for my fam and myself, and a lot out all these folks. So thank you so much, Leor. Congrats on your book. Everybody got it. Look at this shit. Beautiful. Look at this man. Wow.
Thank you, Sarah Joyce of Glitter Guts, for taking that photo. Thank you, Philip Montouro and Jamie Ludwig, for editing all of this. Thank you, everyone. Seriously, thank you so much. Michelle, Mike, Andre, Kaina, Zen, Pivot. You guys, really thank you for everything. It means a lot. It means a lot for you to be here. And I hope everyone has a good night. Sen, hey Sen. Bye. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope everyone has a good night. I guess we're gonna sign off now, and I'm just gonna wave until this thing goes.